These are the solutions to the March 10th, 2018 QAS SAT Math Calculator, Section 4. You can find these QAS SATs on Reddit if you search around. The QAS stands for Question and Answer Service. These tests are available a few times a year if you pay for them when you take the SAT. The first question asks, if you have 3x plus 2, and you multiply that by 2x plus 3, which expression do you get? Well, 3x times 2x, that's 6x squared. 3x times 3, 9x. 2 times 2x is plus 4x. And then 2 times 3 is 6. These add up to 13x. And so you can see that the answer is C. 6x squared plus 13x plus 6. Question number 2 lists the following function, f of x equals 2x minus 11. And it asks, what is f of negative 2? Well, since I replaced this x here with negative 2, then I must replace this x with negative 2. So this is equal to 2 times negative 2 minus 11, which is negative 4 minus 11, which is negative 15, and that is A. Question 3 gives us a chart with the number of flight arrivals at an airport, and it asks, based on the table above, what fraction of the flights for airline A were delayed? So we want to look for the row that contains airline A and look for the number of delayed flights. And that is just 861 delayed flights, and that is out of a total of 2,890. So the answer is C. Question number 4. A political scientist wants to predict how the residents of New Jersey will react to a new bill proposed in the state Senate. And then it asks which of the following study designs is most likely to provide reliable results for the political scientist. A says mailing a questionnaire to each of 200 randomly selected residents of New Jersey. The next is surveying a group of 300 randomly selected New Jersey residents. C says interviewing a group of students randomly. Well, the question doesn't ask about students, so we're going to say that C is out. D asks to randomly survey a group of 1,500 residents in the U.S. Well, we're only focused on New Jersey, and we'll get better results if we survey 300 rather than 200 people. The other problem with mailing a questionnaire to 200 randomly selected residents is that you're not necessarily going to get 200 results. So the answer is B. Question 5. If the ratio of 0.5 to x, 0.5 to x, is equivalent to 1.5 to 2.5, 1.5 to 2.5, what is the value of x? Well, we can see that in this direction we're going to multiply by 3. So in this direction we would multiply by 3. So the question is, what times 3 is 2.5? And the answer to that is 0.75. And that is the value of x. The other way to think about it is to go from the 2.5 back to the x, we would need to not multiply by 3, but rather divide by 3. And 2.5 divided by 3 is 0.75. So the answer is A. Question 6 is one of these questions that looks a lot harder than it actually is. We're given 8ax minus 4 equals 24. and we're asked for the value of 2ax minus 1. And you might notice that if I divide this by 4, I must also divide that by 4. So this 4 will divide into the 8 and give me the 2. And then this 4 will divide into the 4 and give me the 1. So the answer is just 24 divided by 4, which is 6. The other way to think about it is if you have 8ax minus 4 equals 24, you could factor out a 4 from the left side, leaving you with 4 parenthesis 2ax minus 1 equals 24. And then you can see that 4 times this entire thing here is 24, so that must be 6. So the answer is B. Question 7 gives us two equations. The first one is P equals 2000x. The next one is P equals 500 times 2 to the x. I'll call that P1 and P2. And the question says, a website administrator is considering using one of the two models above to predict the total number of purchases P made X weeks after the website's advertising campaign begins. How many more purchases are predicted by the exponential model than by the linear model? Well, this one here is the linear model, linear, and this one here is the exponential model. 5 weeks after the advertising campaign begins. So we have to basically solve these equations for x equals 5. So P1 would equal 2,000 times 5, which would be 10,000. And P2 would equal 500 times 2 to the 5th, which is 32. And we can do that on our calculator, but we can also ignore those two zeros for now. And then 5 times 32 is really 10 times 16, which is 160. Then we put the two zeros back on, we get 16,000, 10,000, so the difference is 6,000. So the answer is A. Question 8 talks about a reservoir that had an original capacity of 300,000 acre feet of water. And an acre foot is just an acre of land filled 1 foot deep with water. They say that they had this much storage capacity in 1928, and that starting in 1929, sediment carried downstream by the river collected in the reservoir reduced the storage capacity by 1,700 acre feet. So in each year we're going to lose 1,700 acre feet. And so it asks us which of the following could be a graph of the reservoir's capacity in acre feet as a function of time. Well, if you're losing 1,700 acre feet per year, that's a rate that is constant, and that's kind of like a slope. And so we're going to have a graph that looks something like this. We're going to start with 300,000, 300,000, little k for 1,000, and we're going to slowly drop like that, 1,700 acre feet per year. So the answer to number 8 is A. Question number 9 still asks about the reservoir. What was the approximate storage capacity in acre feet of the reservoir at the end of 1993? Well, we started at the beginning of 1929, and we went all the way through to the end of 1993, which is like the beginning of 1994. So when you subtract those, you get 65. 65 years times negative 1,700 per year, and that will equal 110,500. And if you subtract that from 300,000, you get 189,500. So the answer is B. Question 10 is another follow-up question to the reservoir problem. It says if the reservoir capacity T years after 1928 was between 290,000 and 292,000, little k stands for 1,000, which of the following must be true? So they're asking t less than 2, t greater than 2 less than 4, t greater than 4 less than 6, t greater than 6 less than 8. So this number shows a loss of 10,000 acre-feet, which when you divide it by 1,700 would take 5.88 years. And this one shows a loss of 8,000 acre-feet, which would take 4.7 years. So that means that the time is going to be less than 5.88 and greater than 4.7. And so it's in the range of C, which says 4 less than t less than 6. And you can see that 4.7 is greater than 4 and 5.88 is less than 6. Question 11 shows us a scatter plot of the total fat and dietary cholesterol of sandwiches, and it gives us a line of best fit. The question at the end says, how many grams of total fat are in the sandwich for which this prediction is the most accurate? So we have a line of best fit that looks something like this, and there's one sandwich that is right there, and if you go across, you will see that that is 60 grams of fat. So the answer is 60, D. Question 12 says, which of the following is a solution to the equation? The square root of 14 minus x plus 2 is equal to x. We want to isolate this and then square both sides to get rid of the square root. So we subtract 2 from both sides, and we get the square root of 14 minus x is equal to x minus 2. And then we square both sides. And we're left with 14 minus x equals x minus 2 squared, which is x squared minus 4x plus 4. Add x to both sides. Subtract 14 from both sides. The left side you're left with nothing, so 0. So 0 equals x squared. And then minus 4x plus x is minus 3x. Minus 14 plus 4 is minus 10. So 0 equals, we factor, and we need two numbers that are going to multiply to negative 10 and add to negative 3. So that is x minus 5 and x plus 3. And so we have answers of x equals 5 and x equals negative 3. And we have to check those answers to see if they work. If we put 5 in, we get the square root of 9, which is 3, plus 2, and that does equal 5. If we put in negative 3, we have the square root of 14 minus negative 3, and that gives us the square root of 17, so that won't work. So the answer is 5. Now this did seem a little bit involved, and so the fast way to do this problem, actually, because we only have 3 numbers, would be to plug them in. So if we plug in our negative 2, we would have the square root of 14 minus negative 2, and then plus 2 equals negative 2. But since this is positive, this will always be positive, this does not work because we cannot have something positive. This would be something positive, and this is something negative. Positive cannot equal negative. The next one is 1. We have the square root of 14 minus 1 plus 2 equals 1. That doesn't work because then we have the square root of 13, which is not an integer. So if we're confident, we can say that the answer is 5 without even trying it. But if we try it, you will see that it is true. So the answer is C. Question 13 gives us a graph. Looks about like this. We got the price of the order on the left, price, and on the bottom we have the weight of the order in pounds. And it looks approximately like this. And so what you can see is that the slope here is greater than the slope here. So you are getting a little bit, you're paying a little bit more here for the same weight than you are here. You're paying a little bit less for the same weight. And so it looks like the price is steeper here, literally steeper here, to get to this point, and then the price is not as much. So when we look at the answers, it asks which statement is correct. So A says the company charges more per pound for orders greater than 100 pounds. Well, this is the 100 pounds right here. Actually, you're charging less per pound after 100 pounds, so A is not right. So B says the company charges less per pound for orders greater than 100 pounds than for orders less than 100 pounds, and that is the correct answer. Question 14 gives us the problem 2x plus 3 equals x minus 4, and it asks for the value of x plus 8. So I'm going to collect the x's on the left. I'm going to go minus x, minus x. These are gone. Now I have 2x minus x on the left, and I get x plus 3 equals negative 4. But I want x plus 8, and I have x plus 3. So I just need to add 5 to the left and 5 to the right, and this is x plus 8. And that's going to equal 1. So the answer is C. Question number 15. A group of 10 students played a certain game. 10 students. Every player received a score equal to an integer from 1 to 10 inclusive. For the 10 players, the mean score was 4. So 4 is the mean. That's actually like every student getting a score of 4. So we have a total of 40. If more than half of the players received a score greater than 5, which of the following is true about the mean score of the remaining players? So more than 5 players could be 6 players. And they got a score of greater than 5, which could be a score of 6. So that means that we'd have 6 players with 6 points each, and that would be a total of 36. But we only had a total of 40, which means that we only have 4 points left to spread between, the 4 other people. So that means a score of 1 each if we only had 6 people above 5, but we might have had more above 5. So the answer is A. It must be less than 4. Question 16 shows a frame. Looks about like this. And we have a length of x on the top. We have a length of 2x up and down, and a width of 2. And it gives us an expression for the area of the frame. It tells us that the area of the frame is 2x squared minus a bunch of stuff. Well, the area of the frame, all of this, is going to be the area of this entire frame which is going to be 2x squared, this times this, minus the area of the inside. So the only choice for this expression here is the area of the inside of the frame. We don't even really care what this is. So then the answer is C, the area in square inches of the inner rectangle. And in here was an x minus 4 times 2x minus 4. And if you need to know where that comes from, basically this distance here is going to be this distance here minus this minus this. So it's going to be a distance of x minus 2 here minus 2 here, so that's minus 4. And then the next one is going to be this long distance here, this 2x minus 2 here minus 2 here, and that gives us 2x minus 4. But the answer is C. Question 17 gives us f of x equals x, parenthesis, x plus 5. It tells us the function f is defined above. If the function g is defined by g of x equals f of x plus 5, they want to know what is the value of g of 3. Well, g of 3 is f of 3 plus 5. What is f of 3? Well, f of 3 is 3 plus 5. That is 3 times 8 is 24. So this is 24. And then we have plus 5. So g of 3 is 24 plus 5 is 29. D is the answer. Question 18. A sample of 600 ninth graders was selected at random and asked how much time they spend on homework each day. Of the ninth graders selected, 220 spend less than 2 hours on homework each day. If the conclusion was drawn that approximately 1.35 million ninth graders spend less than 2 hours on homework each day, which of the following is closest to the population in millions of ninth graders? So we basically have 220 to 1.35 million, and they're asking 600 to what? Well, we can see that 220, you almost multiply by 3 to get 600. So you're going to almost multiply by 3 to get the question mark. And 1.35 times 3, it's going to be 3.68. So the answer is C. You can also set up a ratio like this. You can say question mark over 600 equals 1.35 over 220. Multiply both sides by 600 to get rid of the 600. And then you would do 1.35 times 600 on your calculator, and then divided by 220, and you would get the answer that way as well. Question number 19 tells us that y equals negative 2, y plus 11 is equal to x squared. And they say if x1, y1 and x2, y2 are solutions to the system of equations above, what are the values of x1 and x2? Basically, we just need to solve for x. We take this negative 2 and we put it in there. We get negative 2 plus 11 is equal to x squared. 9 is equal to x squared. So if we square root both sides, to get rid of this square here, and the square root is gone, it's really going to be plus or minus root 9. So the answer is plus or minus 3. So the answer is D. Question number 20 shows us a pyramid. It says that from this consumer to this consumer, 10% of energy is transferred, then 10% more is transferred, and then 10% is transferred to there. So each unit above receives 10% of the one below. If the primary producers, which are on the bottom, primary producers, start with 5,000 joules, it asks how many calories are transferred to the secondary consumers, which is this level right here. Well, 5,000 is going to become 500, and that's going to become 50 joules. So 50 joules will go right into there, and it says that this is equal to how many calories. So we can write how many calories over 50 joules equals 1 calorie over 4.18 joules. So all we need to do is multiply both sides by 50 and by 50, and we get 50 divided by 4.81, which is going to be around 12.5 or so. So the answer is A. That is 11.96. You could also just do it on your calculator, 50 divided by 4.18, and you'll get the answer that way. Question 21 gives us the a root of x to the b, and it says, which of the following is equivalent to the expression above for all x greater than 0, where a and b are positive integers? Well, when something is written like this, you just simply need to know your exponent rules. This is going to be x to the power of b over a. So the answer is C. It's just a question of whether you know your exponent rules. When you have 8, for example, to the 2/3, this means the cubic root of 8 and then squared. For question 22, we're given a graph where we have speed on the left and time on the bottom. And it looks approximately like this. We got time on the bottom. On the left side, we got speed. And it says, the graph above models the speed of an automobile during the first 5 minutes of travel. What is the total distance traveled from t equals 1 to t equals 4? So this is 1 here, and this is 4 here, and this goes right to 0.5. And this is in miles per minute. So we got miles per minute. And we have, on here, we got 3 minutes. Well, if I go 0.5 miles per minute, 0.5 miles per minute for 3 minutes, I multiply by 3 minutes. Minutes cancel. I'm left with units of miles. 0.5 times 3 is 1.5 miles. B. Question 23 gives us a triangle. We have x degrees here, and we are told that in the figure above, the sine of 90 minus x is equal to 12 over 13. The first thing I notice is that we probably have the 12, 13, 5 triangle. This is a Pythagorean triple, a right triangle with sides 5, 12, 13. So based on the shape of the triangle, the short one is probably 5, and so on. There's also a rule that you should know from trigonometry that says that the cosine of x always equals the sine of 90 minus x. So this is going to equal the cosine of x. So if the cosine of x is 12/13, this is 12, and this is 13, and because of this, this is 5, and they're asking us what is the value of sine of x. Well, the sine of x is 5/13. So the answer is B. Please don't use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out 5. Learn your Pythagorean triples. Here's a couple more of them. 3, 4, 5. And all the multiples of it, like 6, 8, 10, and 9, 12, 15. There's also 7, 24, and 25. And another good one to know, because it comes up often enough, is 8, 15, and 17. You can also find these listed on our SAT facts and formulas sheet, which is on fusionmath.com/downloads. Question 24. Give us an equation. S equals 9.8 t. Now I immediately recognize the 9.8 as the acceleration due to gravity from physics class. The problem tells us the equation above can be used to approximate the speed s in meters per second of an object t seconds after being dropped into free fall. Which of the following is the best interpretation of the number 9.8 in this context? A. The speed in meters per second of the object when it hits the ground. No. The increase in speed in meters per second of the object for each second after it's dropped. That is the right answer. We don't need to look at C and D. See, if you just fall for 1 second, your speed is going to equal 9.8 times 1. If you fall for 2 seconds, your speed is going to equal 9.8 times 2. And so your speed is going to increase by 9.8 meters per second if your time increases by 1 second. And that's why B is the correct answer. Question 25. The SAT likes to put a lot of reading on their test. This question tells you that a magazine article on video game habits in the United States reported that in 2012, gamers spent an average of 5.6 hours per week playing games. The only important number is 5.6 in 2012. It then says that the article also reported that the average for 2013 was 6.3. And then it says, based on the article, how did the average number of hours that gamers spent playing games per week change? Well, it went up. And so the percent increase is always equal to the change divided by the original times 100%. So we have 6.3 minus 5.6 over 5.6. And that is going to be 0.7 over 5.6. And if you know your times tables, you are going to notice that this is equal to 7 over 56, which is equal to 7 over 7 times 8. The 7s cancel, leaves you with 1/8, which is 0.125. And then you multiply that by 100% and you get 12.5% increase, which is A. Of course, on your calculator you can just divide these two numbers and you will get 0.125 right away, which is 12.5%. Question 26 gives us the following two linear equations. 5x plus y equals A, and negative 3x minus 2y is equal to 5. The question says, in the system of equations above, A is a constant. What is the y value of the solution to the system in terms of A? So what that means is we want y to equal an equation with A in it. That's what they're asking for. All of the answers have a's in them. There are no x's in them. And the best way to solve a system of equations is almost always to add them together in some fashion. We're going to add these together and get rid of the x's. But first I have to make the coefficients of x's the same. I'm going to multiply this entire equation by 3 and this entire equation by 5. The 3 distributes to everything as the 5 distributes to everything here. And so for the first equation I get 15x plus 3y is equal to 3a. And for the next equation I get negative 15x minus 10y is equal to 25. I think the answer will be A because it's the only one that has a 25 in it. When I add these equations together, these go away, and I end up with negative 7y equals 3a minus 25, and I can see now that it will be A. I divide both sides by negative 7, divide by negative 7, and y is equal to this negative sign. What they do to get that answer is the negative sign divides into that one and into that one, and you get negative 3a plus 25 over 7. But again, as soon as I got this 25, I was pretty sure that it was going to be A, and we were right. Number 27 gives us y equals x squared minus 6x minus 16. The graph of the equation above in the xy plane is a parabola, which is true, but we don't actually need to know that. Which of the following equivalent forms of the equation includes the x and y coordinates of the vertex as constants? We have a calculator program on our website. If you go to fusionmath.com/downloads, you will find that we have a zip file with 6 or 7 programs in there, and one of them is the program Vertex. And if you install that on your TI-83 or TI-84, you can literally just put in the 1, which is the A value. It's the coefficient of x squared. You can put in the minus 6, which is the so-called B value, the coefficient of x. Then you can put in the minus 16, and the program will give you the vertex almost right away. And then you can just match up the constants to the answers. To do it algebraically, though, you do it as follows. You go y equals x squared minus 6x, and then you leave a blank, and then you leave another blank, and then you go minus 16, and you group like this. Then you're going to get the first parenthesis is going to become something squared, x and a number, and then you'll have those two numbers again, minus 16. So the way it works is this number here is always going to be half of this number here. And then this number is always this number squared, which means that this number is actually half of this number squared. So the number right in here is going to be 9 because it's half of negative 6, which is negative 3, and then squared is plus 9. And then we minus the 9 right away to keep the value on the right side of the equation the same. So we have a minus 9 here, and this is a minus 3. Remember, this number here is always half of the coefficient of x. So then we write y equals x minus 3 squared minus 25. And we can see the answer is in fact A. But if I were doing this problem, I would go straight to the program on my TI-83 or TI-84 called Vertex, punch in 1, negative 6, negative 16, and it's going to give you 3 and negative 25, and that will be A. Question number 28. Question 28 and 29 refer to the following information. I'm not going to read it all, but if you have the test in front of you, you can read it yourself. It talks about some surveys that were done, and the results are plotted Tia's survey results are look approximately like this. And then Amir's survey results look approximately like this. This one is 11, these are each 10, 11. The tall one is 27, and then 12, 10, and 5. 12, 10, and 5. And this is 15 minutes, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and 45 minutes. And number 28 asks, what is the value of the median of Tia's survey and the median of Amir's survey? They want the difference. So they want the median of Tia's survey minus the median of Amir's survey. This is Amir here. Well, this is the median right here when you plot a so-called box and whisker plot. So the median, if you look at the graph, this is actually at 35. And so this is 35 here, minus the median of Amir's survey. Well, here we have 12 employees, 10 and 5. I forgot to write those down. Now, these are the number of employees along the left side. And on the bottom, we have the average one-way commute time. So this is the time. So we can see that we have 10 people with a 15-minute commute time, 10 people with a 20, 11 people with a 25. We have 5 people with a 45-minute commute time, 10 people with a 40, 12 people with a 35-minute commute time, and 27 people, that's a lot of people, with a 30-minute commute time. So we can be pretty sure that if we were to write all of these numbers out in a row, starting with 15 minutes, and then 15 minutes, and then 15 minutes, 10 of them, and then we would have 20 minutes, and 20 minutes, etc. 20, etc. That we would have a whole bunch of 30s in the middle. 30-minute commute times. We'd have 27 of them. And so we can be very sure that the median is going to be one of these 30s. So it's going to be a median of 35 for Tia and a median of 30 for Amir. And the difference is going to be 5. And so that is the answer. And it is C. Number 29 is a continuation of this problem. Here's a little bit to know about box plots, box and whisker plots. They generally look like this, and this first location is always the minimum. This location here is always the maximum. This is the median, which is the middle of the data. If you have 6 data points, the middle will be the average of the middle 2. If you have an odd amount of data points, the middle number will just be the middle number. This one here is called the first quartile. Think of it as Q1. And this is the middle of the first half of the data. And this one here, you might guess, is Q3, and you'd be right. The third quartile, the third quarter of the data, and this is the middle of the second half of the data. So if you look at the answers, you might notice that A is definitely out because we have a minimum of 15. We have a maximum of 45. We also have a middle or a median of 30. And if you look at B, C, and D, they all have a minimum of 15, a maximum of 45, and a median of 30. So what we need to do is we need to figure out what Q1 is and what Q3 is. So we need to look at the middle of the first half for Q1 and the middle of the second half for Q3. Now for Q1, we need to decide, is it going to be 20 or is it going to be 25? Because those are our two options between those three choices, B, C, and D. And then for Q3, we need to choose between 35 and 40. So we need to take a closer look at the data. Now, here's what we have to do. We know that we're going to have the number 15 minute commute times, we're going to have 10 of them. And then we're going to have 20-minute commute times, and we're going to have 10 of those. We're going to have 11 25-minute commute times. We're going to have 30-minute commute times. We're going to have 27 of those. We're going to have 35-minute commute times, 12. We're going to have 10-minute commute times, 40 of them. We're going to have, I'm sorry, not 10-minute commute times, rather 40-minute commute times, and we're going to have 10 of them. And then we're going to have 45-minute commute times and 5 of those. Now, if you add up all of these numbers on the bottom, you get 85. So you get 85. And if we divide that by 2, we're going to get 42 and a half. So we're going to have 42, and then we're going to have 1, and then we're going to have 42. And this is the median. So we have 42 to the left. So we have to figure out which number is going to be in the middle of 42 data points. Well, we're going to have 20 data points, and then we're going to have 20 data points, and then we're going to have 2 in the middle that we're going to need to take the average of, and this is going to give us our Q1. So we have 10 here, and we have 10 here, and we're going to have 2 25s, and the average of 25 is 25. And so we're actually going to have 25 for Q1. Now, to find Q3, we have to do the same thing, but from the other side. We have 5 here, and then 10, and that's 15. But we need to go up to 20. Well, we have 12 35s, so we are going to have 2 35s in the middle. So we have 35 as Q3. So we have to pick the one that has 25 for Q1 and 35 for Q3. And that is B. Question number 30 shows the following graph. We have a line that starts at the origin and goes to the point 4, 3. Right about there, 4, 3. And then we have another line that is perpendicular to it that intersects on the x-axis at point P. There's a right angle here. And we're also shown this vertical line, and there's a right angle there. And it says, in the xy plane above, lines K, this is line K, and line L are perpendicular. Well, we can see that right here from this right angle. So they do this a lot in the SAT. They give you information. They describe a drawing that they don't really need to describe. What is the coordinate of point P? Well, to find the coordinate of point P, the simplest way to do it is to find the slope of this line. We know that the x value is unknown, so it's going to be x. But then the y value of that point is going to be 0. So if we can get an equation for this line right here, then we can simply solve for the y value. Well, the slope of this line is going to be rise of 3 and a run of 4. So this is a slope of 3/4. That means that this slope of the other line, of line K, is the opposite reciprocal. So we flip the slope, we get 4/3, and we put a negative sign in front of it. And so we have the point slope form of the equation, y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And so I'm going to call this point here x1, this is y1, so I have y minus y1, which is 3, equals negative 4/3, x minus x1, which is 4. So y minus 3 equals, this distributes, negative 4/3 x minus, this distributes here, 4/1, multiply the fractions. We actually have negative negative, so it's positive, and we get 16/3. Let's not forget that y is equal to 0 from above, from right there. So I can make y equal to 0, that makes it go away. So I have negative 3 equals negative 4/3 x plus 16/3. Now we can make this negative 9/3. We're going to subtract this thing from both sides. That'll make it go away. So we have minus 16/3 equals negative 4/3x. Multiply everything by negative 1 to make everything positive. We have 9 now plus 16 is 25/3 equals 4/3x. Multiply both sides by 3/4 times by 3/4. These cancel, those cancel, and x is 25/4. And that means we cut it in half twice. So we cut it in half once and we get 12.5, and we cut that in half again and we get 6.25. So the answer is D. Now that seems like it took a little bit of time to do, and it does. So I'm going to show you a better way to do it, although it's not necessarily the most obvious way, but it involves trigonometry. So what we do is we redraw it. This is the origin here, 0, 0. This is the point, 4, 3. Well, we call this theta, and then we call this h for the hypotenuse of the triangle. And this is the point 0, 0. So what we want to do is we want to solve for theta. So we know that the tan of theta is going to equal the slope of the line. And that is actually a fact about the slope of a line is equal to the tangent of theta. Because if I draw this here and I call this 3, and I call this length to there, I call that 4, well, tan of theta is equal to, tan is this over that, and so tan is 3/4. Now we just need to do the inverse tangent function to both sides. Tan minus 1 of tan theta equals tan minus 1 of 3/4. Now that gives us theta is equal to 36.87 degrees approximately. Now from Pythagorean triples, you should know right away that this length here is going to be 5, because this is 3 and this is 4. And so we don't actually need to calculate this using the Pythagorean theorem. So we do have the length of this leg. And now we're going to calculate h. We're going to write a new trig function, and that is going to be the cosine of theta is going to equal this side here over the hypotenuse, the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So that is equal to 5/h. And then we cross multiply, and we get 5 equals h cosine theta. Divide both sides by cosine theta. 5/cos theta is equal to h. And 5 divided by cos 36.87 gives us 6.25. So h is equal to 6.25, and again the answer is D. So that is a different way to do it, and it's actually the faster way to do it. Question number 31. Now we're on to the grid-in section, no longer multiple choice. A museum builds a scale model of a dinosaur skeleton where 1 centimeter of the model is equal to 16 centimeters of the actual skeleton. So 1 to 16 is the ratio, and that should equal another ratio, typically in a problem like this. If the length of the femur bone of the actual skeleton is 184 centimeters, so 184, and we put 16 in the bottom and 184 in the bottom because both of these are the actual lengths. And this is going to be our x value up here, I believe. What is the length to the nearest 1/10 of a centimeter of the femur bone in the model? Yes, because up here and up here, these are both the model. So we simply have to cross multiply. 16x equals 184, and we have to do 184 divided by 16, and that is 11.5 equals x. So that's what you would grid in, 11.5. Question 32. How many cups, each with a capacity of 8 fluid ounces, can be filled with water from a cooler that contains 10 gallons of water? 10 gallons of water, and they tell us that 1 gallon is 128 fluid ounces. So 1 gallon equals 128 fluid ounces. Well, that means that 10 gallons is 1,280 fluid ounces. And so we just need to do 1,280 divided by 8. And 128 divided by 8 is going to be 16, so this is 160. The reason I know that is because I know that 8 times 8 is 64, therefore 8 times 16, just double this to get that. That's going to be double this, which is 128. So you can also, of course, just do it on your calculator, and you'll get 160. Question 33. In triangle ABC, angle A measures 48 degrees. So we'll just draw it as a right triangle. This will be A, B, and C. So angle A measures 48 degrees, angle B measures 88 degrees, and angle C measures 44 degrees. So we're going to have a similar triangle over here, and this is LMN. So LMN. And they say LM to AB. So LM to AB is equal to MN to BC. So that makes sense. The sides correspond. And that AC, or LN to AC, that they're all equal to 3. Well, what that means is that, so if I write LN to AC equals 3, that means that this triangle is 3 times bigger than the other triangle. But of course, what does the angle measure in degrees of angle L? Well, none of that really matters, it's just 48 degrees, because similar triangles always have similar, or rather, same angles. So the fact that the second triangle is larger does not change the fact that the angles are all the same. Here is actually a faster way to do question 33. They say that triangle ABC is similar to triangle LMN. By saying that, what they mean is that angle A corresponds to angle L. Angle B corresponds to angle M, and angle C corresponds to angle N. So if you look straight to the end of the question, they say, what is the measure in degrees of angle L? Well, again, L corresponds to A. So L is going to be whatever A is. And what is A? A is 48 degrees. So since A is 48 degrees, that means that L is also 48 degrees. Now, the one thing you do have to be careful of is just making sure that they do write the triangle LMN in the correct order. So LM to AB, LM to AB is what they write, so that is true. So LM is to AB. So they did write it in the correct order, and so angle A is angle L, which is 48. And that's a very fast way to do it. Question 34 gives the following two equations. 1/2 y equals 19 over 12 minus 1/3 x, and then 5y equals 3x. To solve this equation, the fastest way, what I would do is I would write the equation in standard form, and then I would use my calculator. So to write this in standard form, you want to have the x first, so I would add 1/3 x to both sides of the first equation, getting 1/3 x plus 1/2 y equals 19 over 12. And then the next one, I would subtract 3x from both sides, and I would get negative 3x plus 5y is equal to 0. And then I would plug in this value, this value, this value, and this value into the calculator app, the TIA 84 or 83 app called PLYSMLT2. And what it will give you is it'll give you the option to solve a system of equations, and you want to choose two equations and two unknowns, and you will be shown two boxes in a way, or two columns, and you're going to want to put the 1/3 here, the 1/2 here, the negative 3 here, the 5 here, the 19/12 here, and the 0 here, and you're going to get the value of x1 and x2. Those are going to be the two solutions to the equation, and then you're just going to simply put them like this. You're going to go x1 comma x2. This is actually the y value, and so then you would divide them. You go x1 over x2, that is your a over b, and that's the simplest way to do it. I will do the next one algebraically, and you'll see that it takes a bit longer. So since you are allowed to use a calculator on these tests, you must use a calculator, and you must also install, make sure you have the programs that I mentioned. There's the ones from our website, and then there is PLYSMLT2, which can be transferred from calculator to calculator using a USB cable or the old style headphone jack cable that the T83s use. Here is another approach to solving question number 34. The SAT is notorious for giving problems where you think you know how to solve it, and you might, but you end up going down a path that takes very, very long. This is one of these problems. Now, solving on your calculator is pretty quick and easy, and you get the answer fairly fast. However, this way is even faster. They ask for the value of a over b, which is really the value of x over y, the intersection point, because they call the point a comma b, which is really just x comma y. So a over b is x over y. We have this relationship right here that tells us that 5y is 3x. So no matter what x and y are, this relationship is going to be true because it is a solution to both equations. So x is actually equal to, well, I divide by 3, and I divide by 3, x is equal to 5/3 y. So I can actually write 5/3 y instead of x over y. The y's cancel, and I get 5/3, and that is the answer to the question, 5/3. Very fast. Question 35 asks, if z is equal to 5 over 2z minus 21/8, what value of z satisfies the equation above? I don't usually like working with negative numbers too much, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 21 over 8 to both sides. And that's going to cause these to go away. And then I'm going to subtract z from both sides, and that will cause these to go away, and I'll have a minus z over here. So on the left side I have 21/8, and on the right side I have 5/2 z minus 2/2 z, which is just 1z. So 2/2 z taken away from 5/2 z equals 3/2 z. And then to solve for z, I could divide by 3/2. But that gets kind of messy, so I'm actually not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of 3/2, which is 2/3, times 2/3. 3 cancels 3, 2 cancels the 2. You have z by itself, so z equals this product. Now, I'm not going to multiply them together because I can simplify. 2 divided by 2 is 1, 8 divided by 2 is 4, 3 divided by 3 is 1, 21 divided by 3 is 7. So I'm left with 7 over 4. My answer is simply 7/4. Question 36. It tells us that we have a circle in the xy plane that has a diameter with endpoints -1, -3, and 7, 3. So if we want to find the diameter, we can find the distance between these two x values. From -1 to 7 is going to be a distance of 8. And then the distance between the two y values, from -3 up to 3, that's going to be a distance of 6. So we have a triangle that will look something like this. And if we have a 6, 8 in a right triangle, we have 10 right here. We don't need to use the Pythagorean theorem because that is a known Pythagorean triple. So the diameter is 10. That means that the radius, of course, is 5. Now let's find the center of the circle. The center of the circle is the midpoint of these 2 points. So how do we find the midpoint? We find the average of the x values, so -1 plus 7 over 2, comma, -3 plus 3 over 2, the average of the y values. So we have 6 over 2, comma, 0. So the midpoint of the circle is at 3, 0. Now let's draw a graph. We are told that there is a point somewhere here, 0, b, that the circle intersects. We know that the center of the circle is at 3, 0. 1, 2, 3, 0, right there. We know that the radius is 5. So the circle intersects the y-axis at 0, b. That means that the distance from that point to the center is definitely the radius. So that is 5. This is 3, and we have another Pythagorean triple, so the distance here is 4. That makes b equal to 4. Question number 37. This is the second last question, and then there's one more, 38. They're both based on a race summary of a rowing race. Now, something which is a little bit typical of the SAT is that the last couple questions, if you get there, if you have time to get there, they're usually not that hard, and this is the case for this problem. Question 37 says, during the 4th split of the race, the team rowed at a rate of 28 strokes per minute. The split times are given in seconds. The 4th split of the race is 108 seconds. And you are told that the team rowed, again, at 28 strokes per minute. So this is seconds, and so we're going to have a certain number of strokes in that split, and that's what the question is about. And this is going to be equal to 28 strokes per minute, which is 60 seconds. And so we just need to multiply both sides by 108 so that these cancel, times 108, and that will be the number of strokes. And this equals 50.4. Now don't grid in 50.4 because it says to the nearest whole number how many strokes. So that would be simply 50 strokes. Question 38, the final question, says, by the end of the season, the coach wants the team to reduce its mean split time by 10% as compared to this race. At the end of the season, what should the team's mean split time be? Well, we have to find the mean split time, and then we have to reduce it by 10%. So we're going to take 109 plus 112 plus 111 plus 108. We're going to divide all of that by 4. These two numbers here should add up, and then these two numbers here should add up. So you basically have 220 plus 220 is 440 over 4, and that's going to equal 110 as the mean split time. And then we have to take the 110, we have to multiply it by 0.9 to reduce it by 10%. And 11 times 9 is 99. So this should be 99 seconds. So that's it. That's the end of the section. A couple things to think about. The calculator section is actually a section on the SAT where you can benefit greatly by being very, very strong with numbers. You notice in this question that they deliberately gave you 109 and 111, and those add up to 220. And then they gave you 112 and 108, and those very easily also add up to 220. 220 and 220 is 440. Then divided by 4, you ignore the 0. 4 divided by 4. 44 divided by 4 is 11. And then put the 0 on 110. And then 110 times 0.9 is just like 11 times 9 is 99. So this question, it would probably be slower to use a calculator, although there is the added safety benefit of using a calculator. So thanks for watching, and check out our other videos, and don't forget to download our SAT calculator programs from our website. Also check out our ACT, SAT facts and formulas sheet on our downloads page on our website too, fusionmath.com. Thanks again. Good luck on the test.